starting Be'ezra Hashem siman Hey in haGuela, and the Rebbe is now starting his discussion of Nisim. And this siman is going to be, he's going to bring down the Ramban by Pilegesh Begiva to prove that it's possible, b'derech hateva, for the smaller side to win a war. For the army that's smaller to win a war.
You said.
Yeah, to prove that the weaker side could sometimes win a war, b'derech hateva, so you shouldn't be nispal from the victory of the Tzionim. Kosav Ramban HaKadosh Parshas Vayera B'inyan Sdoim V'toya V'seha, by the story of Sdoim, where the people surrounded Lot's house and they wanted to break in and be mizana with the men. Nimdad lahem kimidasam, and they got the punishment that was coming to them. V'agav grara bir sham inyan pilegesh begiva v'sibas teusam v'oinsham. He says the Ramban explains the story of Pilegesh Begiva, which is in the story it's in the Sefer Shoftim. And the Ramban doesn't have a Pirush on Shoftim, so he incorporated that into his Pirush al Chumash when he's talking about the Anshe Sdoim. V'nati kan hatzarich l'nyaneinu. We're going to copy down that's part of the Ramban that's relevant to our subject. V'zel l'shaynoi hakadosh. V'dav v'havein ki inyan Pilegesh Begiva afal pishahu nidma l'inyan hazeh shel Sdoim. Even though the story of Pilegesh Begiva sounds similar to the story of Sdoim, and you know the story of Pilegesh Begiva, there was just go say the basics. There was a man who had a Pilegesh, and he was staying in a town called Giva in Binyamin, and the people surrounded his house and they demanded that not his house, but he was staying by a person who was hosting him in his house, and that the people of Giva surrounded him and they demanded to do a toyeva, and he took his Pilegesh and put her outside, and they did something with her, and then she died. And then after that, what happened was the man took the body of his Pilegesh and spread it around the whole Klal Yisrael and said to them, "Look what they did to me. Let's do something about this." And they made a war, and the other Shvatim went to war against Binyamin. Okay, so he's going to say like this. He's going to say, and what happened in the Hemshech was they went to war for 3 days. The first day, Binyamin won. Second day, Binyamin won. And the third day, the other Shvatim won. So we're going to speak about that. He says, even though the story of Pilegesh Begiva is reminiscent of the story of Sdoim, because they also surrounded the house, demanded a toeva, demanded that someone be taken out of the house. So it sounds similar, right? He says, Eino kamoya l'roya. It's not similar. It's not exactly like Sdoim. It's not as bad as Sdoim. Why? Ka'asher b'Sdoim shenemar boi minar v'yad zaken. First of all, by Sdoim, all the people came to Lot's house, from young to old. Kol ha'am mikotze. The whole entire city came to Lot's house. Aval begiva nemar v'hinei anshe oir anshe blial. It was just certain people who were bad people that did it. Shahayu rak miktsasam. It was only a few people. Shahayu sarim v'takifim, powerful people in the city. Be'ir v'hei master esatoeva ra. They're the ones who did the evil thing. Ukmoy sha'amar ha'ish vayakumu alai ba'alei agiva. The man told the story to the rest of the Jews, and he said, the Baalei Agiva, the leaders of Giva, surrounded my house. Gam hapilegesh azu loy haista ejish. That the aveir that they wanted to do wasn't as bad because it was a pilegesh. She wasn't married. Ukvar zan sa'alav. It says she was mizana on him already, and that's why he threw her out of the house, and then he came to bring her back. But she wasn't married to him. A pilegesh is not with kedushin. It's just a concubine. V'davar bar shaloi hayu chayavin misa b'din toyer. So therefore, when the people did this aveira, they weren't chayav misa for it. Shaloi asu ma'isa zulasi inuya pilegesh azoyna. The only thing they did was that they were ma'ana her. They raped her. V'loi niskavnu lamisa shalah. They didn't mean to kill her. Gam lo yimeisa b'yadam, and she didn't die under their hands while they were doing it. Vayishalchua me'itam ka'alois hashachar. It says they sent her away from them in the morning, and she went back to her husband's house, and then v'achakach mesa, and then she died. So they don't have murder on their hands. They don't have znus. So what avera did they do? They did znus, but they didn't do znus of the chayav misa. Because they did an evil thing, kasher asu anshe stoim, it was similar to stoim. Al kein ro'u hashvatim lasos yag l'toira. The shvatim decided to take a powerful action that would show that this should never happen again. Shalei yasav v'lo yamar kein b'Yisrael. K'moisha amru, and by the way, Rebbe Victor Miller has a whole tape on this where he explains what's the extreme reaction that they had when they had this the war where so many thousands of people died. It's because they wanted to make sure that such a thing should never happen again, and Taka never happened again. He says for the whole history of the Jewish people, such a thing never happened any other time. And that was the point of it. And he says, "K'moisha amru tenu esu anashim b'nei v'lial asher bagiva u'nemisem." They said, first they demanded, give over the men who did this avera, and we'll kill them. Unavara roam Yisrael will expel the evil from Klal Yisrael. V'zeh hadin hu mimasha amru Rabbeinu bezdin makim v'oinshim shalom min haTorah. That it says bezdin is allowed to sometimes punish people, even though it's not a punishment that they deserved. It's not because bezdin is going against the Torah. They're making a fence around the Torah. So here also, bezdin was trying to kill the people who did this avera, not because they were chayav misa, but because to make a fence. The Shevet Binyamin Shevet Binyamin didn't agree to make this fence. Bnei Binyamin did not agree to give over the men. Because they weren't chayav misa. So, and they didn't want to take this extra measure. The reason why the other 10 shvatim got punished like this and didn't, or 11 shvatim, they got punished and they didn't win the first part of the war, because they really had no right to make a war. Why the lasos gather the siag ladin b'davar shein bo chiyav misa min haTorah hayamut al shevet binyamin lasos. It wasn't their job to go and make this extraordinary measure. It was Bnei Binyamin who should have done it. Shemitzvah shevet ladruna shivtai. Every shevet has to judge its own people. Ulahamid adas al tila. They're the ones who have to enforce the Torah. V'lo yaleim hayamut al lasos. It wasn't the job of the rest of the shvatim to do it. So therefore both sides were really deserving of an oynish. Ki Binyamin marshia she'enu choishesh liyasir haroim. It was Binyamin's fault for not wanting to punish the Rishayim that they had among them. And the rest of the Shvatim did a war, they launched a war that was unjustified. They didn't even ask Bezdin if they could have this war. And they didn't ask the Urim V'Tumim. What did they ask the Urim V'Tumim? They said, "Mi yalalanu bat chila l'milchama." Who's going to go out to the war first? Meaning, which shevet will lead the milchama? And Hashem answered back, "Yehuda yala." But they didn't ask if they should have the war. They only asked who should lead the war. The milchama, they themselves decided to do it. And they also didn't ask whether they would win. If you're going to give them into my hands. Why didn't they ask that? They relied on their own strength. That they were more than 10 times greater than Binyamin. Hashem walked with them in a manner of chance. They didn't want to trust in Him and ask His advice, so therefore Hashem said, okay, I'll let nature take over, and whatever happens will happen. And because the Shevet Binyamin soldiers were very mighty, V'areim b'tzurois, and their cities were well fortified. V'yishchisu b'Yisrael haboitchim b'Yisrael b'aster. Therefore, they destroyed the other Jews who were relying on their strength. Uvazeh hoisifu b'nei Binyamin ra ra'asam. The Bnei Binyamin added to their evil. The first evil was the actual Pilegesh Begiva, but now they added to it. Ki dai haya lahem. Why they're not supposed to defend themselves? The answer is yeah, but it would have been enough lahavriach Yisrael min hagiva, to chase the other shvatim away. Vehem hiku bahem lamashtis evas oilim. They went and they killed a lot of them. V'hipilu mehem am rav v'atzum chaf beis alafim. They created an eternal hatred between the shvatim, and they killed 22,000 of the shvatim. After that first day of battle, when they were beaten so badly, they realized that they made a mistake. They made a war without having permission from Hashem and not following the Torah. Therefore they said on the second day, and they actually went to Urim v'Tumim, and they didn't just say who should go first. They said, should I go to war again against Binyamin, my brother? So, and Hashem said, go. Right? So they thought they were getting permission, but they still did something wrong. What was wrong? They still didn't ask the right question. They didn't ask if we're going to win. Why? They still relied on their strength. They made the same mistake again. 18,000 Jews died on the second day of the war too. The third day of the war, then they actually fasted and cried. They brought a karbanos asher bought chubis royam to be mechaper. This is the Ramban talking, that they brought a kapara for their thoughts. V'hikrivu shlamim heim shalmei toida, and they brought a korban shlamim. Why? Which is a toida, which is a thank offering. Why? Ki ro atzmam ki kulam pleiti micher Binyamin. They saw that they were all like survivors. They all really should have been killed in the war. They were thanking Hashem for leaving them alive from the war. Someone who survives the war should bring a korban toida. That they brought a korban toida and they told his actions. They told Hashem's deeds. So therefore, on the third day, we know what happened, right? The Binyamin people got beaten, and they were so badly beaten that there were only like 600 of them left, or 300 of them left. So that was the oynish to them. So therefore, both sides of the war got their punishment. And he says what Chazal say, Sanhedrin Kuf Gimel Beis, also plays a role here. Not just that they were trusting in their own strength, and they did the Milchama Shalom Adin, but there's another reason why they were punished. What is it? Shalhaya HaKetzef Bepisloi Shal Micha. That Hashem's anger was because of the idol of Micha. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bichvoidi Loi Mechistem. He says, you didn't protest for my honor against the Pesel Micha. B'mechuyavi Misa. Upashtim Yedeim Be'ikr. People who were Chayav Misa for Avodah Zarah, and they went against the main thing. They went against the Ikrim of Amunah, and they went to Avodah Zarah. But B'chvoid Basar V'dam Mechisem, and you protested for the sake of this one person who got attacked. Yoisim Yeshua Sadin, and he went overboard, attacking Bnei Binyamin for this. So Hashem said, therefore I'm going to punish you. Hashem foiled the attempts of both sides, and he strengthened their hearts to go to war. They didn't remember their brotherhood. And afterwards, at the end, they were sorry that they did it. And they said, we have to do something about Binyamin to build them back up again. So they made sure that those 300 men were able to get married and have children. Ad kan toichin divrei Ramban zal. That's the words of the Ramban. V'chein mevur b'divrei Chazal. That this is based on Chazal and Shavuos. Second Shavuos daf lam and hey amid beis. I think it's actually on Aleph, and I don't know, I have to look it up, but he says, Be'inim Pilegish Bagiva, Shehem loy bichnu im lin soyach oy lin notzach. In Masechta Shavuos it says that there's a discussion there about the Shemus of Hashem in the Tanakh. Which Shemus? Sometimes it says the Shem Adnus, the Shem of Hashem, and it doesn't really mean Hashem. It means maybe not the Adnus, the Shem of Elokim, I think. Elokim sometimes could mean Avodah Zarah. So there's a machlokes Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Shua. Rebbe Lezer says that by Pilegish Begiva, when it says Elokim, it doesn't mean Hashem. It means they were asking Avodah Zarah for help. Why does Rebbe Lezer say that? Because he's bothered that why did they lose the war the first two times? If they asked Hashem, and Hashem said go to war, he said Yehuda Yahweh, he said Aleh, so then why did they lose, right? How could the Urim B'Tumim say something and not have it come true? So Rebbe Lezer therefore says they weren't asking the Urim B'Tumim, they were asking Avodah Zarah. So Rabbi Yeshua answers back and says no, the word Elokim means Hashem. They did ask Hashem. So why did they lose? So Rabbi Yeshua says because they didn't ask the question the right way. They didn't ask if they would win the war. The third day, Shabichnu, that when they did ask the question correctly, Al Yadam, there's a word missing. I think it means they were saved. They were given victory in the war. Ayin Sham. And by the way, Rabbi Victor Miller on the tape number 74, consulting the sages, and I quoted in the Footsteps of the Flock by Tisha B'Av. There's
a way how you ask.
Right. There's a way how to ask. You have to ask the Gedolim before you do something, and not only you have to ask Gedolim. Rabbi Victor Miller says you have to ask the right way. He says, for example, the Aguda, when they ask their Moetzes Gedolei Torah, they don't ask what should be done. They ask, we want to do this. Are we allowed to do it? And that's the problem, he says, because if you ask if you're allowed to do something, the answer might be yeah, you're allowed to do it. But but it might not be the best thing to do, right? So here, what happened by the
in the book you don't say Aguda, but in the index,
the Rebbe Miller didn't say the word Aguda in his drasha. He just said there's a certain Orthodox organization.
So you just guessed, or for fact? It's obvious.
It's obvious what he meant.
Because you don't say Aguda, but in the index when you look up Aguda, it says page 72.
Yeah. Well, because you know what he meant. Anyway, the point is, but his point of learning this Gemara, he's learning it a little different. I think he's learning a little different from the way the Ramban learns it, because Rabbi Miller's learning it that the first two times they didn't win because they asked the question wrong. They didn't ask what's the best strategy here. They just asked, can we do it? So Hashem said, yeah, you can do it. Do it and get killed. But the third time they asked, is it going to work? Is this the right thing to do? Is it going to actually work? That's when they asked correctly. So, but the Ramban's not learning like that. The Ramban sounds like he's learning that the pshat is the first two times they were boiteach in their own strength. They relied on themselves and they didn't rely on Hashem, and that's why they were punished. And the other reasons the Ramban says because the Muhammad was shalom min adin, and because of the Pesel Micha. All right. U'pirkei Rebbe Lezer, siman lamed ches, perek lamed ches, amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ki nasam al haznus shel shevet Binyamin, v'loi ki nasam al Pesel Micha. That this is the same idea that Chazal say in Sanhedrin Dav Kuf Gimel, that the Shvatim had such a zealotry against the znus of Binyamin, but not against Pesel Micha. Lefichach hargu bohem pam rishoina ushniya. That's why they got killed the first two times. Ad shehalchu v'naflu al pneim artzo lifnei aroin bris Hashem, until they bowed down in front of the Aron. V'asu tshuva gedoyel, and they did tshuva. Ayin Sham. So this has all been a quote of the Ramban. That's the end of the siman. But what he's going to do with this, he's going to show that you see the Shevet Binyamin were able to beat the other Shvatim, even though they were a small minority. They were like 11 times greater, and still the Shevet Binyamin won the war, and still the Ramban calls that Derech HaTeva. So the point is, over here also, the Zionists could win a war even though they were the minority, because sometimes B'derech HaTeva, that's what happens.